What's up, guys? This is Ray and welcome to Asian Filmist, and I'm here to talk about the 2018 Japanese film Stolen Identity by Nakata Hideo. If you guys don't know Nakata Hideo, he's the guy who brought to us The Ring. So there was one point in his career where he had, genuinely freakishly horrifying movies. But recently, I don't know, I kind of think the quality of his films has definitely taken a dive. But anyway, this movie stars Kitagawa Keiko, Tanaka Kei, and Chiba Yudai. And when I first saw the trailers for Stolen Identity, I was genuinely intrigued. It seemed like the kind of movie I would enjoy. Granted, at the time, I didn't realize that Nakata was the one helming. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go check it out. And then I actually watched it in the theater, and it wasn't until maybe the day of the screening that I was gonna attend that I realized it was a Nakata movie. So then I had to kind of come to this realization that, okay, it was anything like Nakata's movies as of late, it's not going to be all that great. So I had to warm myself up for what was possibly going to be a disappointment. And it's a good thing I did that. Let's just say that, long story short. And so the story of Stolen Identity, it's about this dude by the name of Tomita. He's a salaryman, and on the way to work, he takes a taxi, and he's in such a hurry because he's late that he leaves his smartphone behind in the taxi. Well, the smartphone gets picked up, but it eventually gets returned to him. But soon after he gets his smartphone back, strange things start to happen between him and his girlfriend Asami. Some of these strange things involve, for example, private and lewd photos of Asami getting leaked to the internet. These photos were initially on Tomita's phone, mind you, as well as Asami's social network accounts getting hacked into, and also both of their smartphones getting locked out of their smartphones by ransomware. And the more these strange things happen around them, they find themselves getting swept up into this case involving a serial killer / stalker. Ooh. For the positives of Stolen Identity, I thought the movie genuinely started interesting. I had some hope for this movie at first. It started off interesting about, this stalker just making life a living hell for Tomita and Asami. And I think as someone who's active in social networks, who uses a smartphone, this is a very relatable movie. Granted, it's not the first of its kind coming from the point of view of a Western moviegoer, because we've had a few movies over the past few decades that involve your personal information, your private information getting stolen over the internet. But I feel like when it comes to Japanese cinema, there hasn't been too many movies about that. So that's kind of like the first interesting point here, to kind of see a Japanese point of view on it. And that's mainly because I feel like in Japan, online privacy is a much bigger deal here than, for example, the States. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like it's definitely a much bigger issue here, because if you look at an average person's Instagram, Facebook account, if they have any photos of themselves, they might tend to obscure their own face, whether it be kind of tilting their head down a bit, or even just blurring out their face, putting some cute emoji on the face, so that way you can't really see who they are if you're just some stranger passing on by. They go out of their way to obscure their faces, even though it's their own account. Not only their face, but also friends' faces, unless they're the type who genuinely don't care. They just want to have their photos out there. But I feel like the average person would most likely be the type to obscure their faces from the camera. And like I said before, I genuinely like the story from when it started. Like, I thought the progression of the story, the kind of obstacles that Tomita and Asami had to overcome, that the stalker was throwing at them, I thought it was fun. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. You kind of expect different things to happen along the way, and they do. I think if you're familiar with if you've ever had any experience, whether it's you on your own or someone else, when it comes to stolen information on the internet, you can kind of guess the kind of stuff that gets thrown at the main character's way, because they all happen in a way. And also when it comes to people like online stalking, like all those kinds of things happen in this movie. So I don't think there's anything that comes out of left field and so that's surprising. But I think genuinely, despite all that, it's an interesting story. That is, the beginning of the movie was interesting, but I'll dive into that in a little bit. But first off, for the negatives, the first thing I want to point out is I don't really like Kitagawa Keiko as an actress. I think I don't know. I think she has her moments where she's all right, but I think for the most part in this movie, I wasn't feeling it. I think her facial expressions are either over the top or just so unnatural. I don't know what it is. She kind of pulls her face around, just kind of look like she's in visible pain or visible suffering. But I just don't buy it because it just doesn't. There's nothing natural looking about her facial expressions. And because of her facial expressions, I feel like some scenes that are meant to be thrilling just ended up becoming comedic. And there's also Chiba Yudai's character. Chiba Yudai plays a detective who's an expert in cyber crimes, it seems like. And he's crucial in helping the police move along to try to locate the criminal, or rather, he's the main job of him and the police is to kind of reveal more information about the stalker to the audience. And while his role had a purpose, I thought some of the things that his character did were just kind of strange. And he does all these things to kind of make the audience question what's happening. But in the end, it's all meant to just throw you into a loop. They don't really follow through with many of these actions that he does, and for the most part, it just doesn't make sense why they even make him do these things in the first place. And speaking of the police, I thought the movie could have used a few more scenes of the police interacting with Tomita and Asami, because up until the final act, they're kind of isolated off to their own devices. They're both interacting with people relating to the same source, if you will. However, because they're kind of isolated, when they eventually meet together, the climax of it all just didn't really hit hard enough. And this movie is meant to be a thriller with all this mystery, these twists and turns that the plot throws at you, but I feel like there wasn't enough suspense in this movie. There's not enough to make me grip my seat, get me to the edge, as a good thriller would do. I mean, this movie, at times it just came off kind of boring, mainly because maybe as a person who's grown up with Western movies and this kind of story isn't a new thing. Maybe because I already knew what was coming, like the kinds of scenes that were bound to happen in the story. Maybe it was because I was familiar with all these kinds of tropes that anything they pulled in Stolen Identity wasn't much of a surprise. Maybe that's why. I don't know. But with that in mind, I didn't think the movie was suspenseful. And it's a bummer because the lack of suspense really put a damper to how great the story started in the beginning, But then when it came to the story, I thought the latter half of the story was utter garbage. I mean, the story fell apart once you got the reveal of the stalker. You find out who the stalker is. And when that happened, it was like the movie just fell apart. I mean, I'm all for with cliched, mentally ill, psychotic kinds of stalker characters, but this movie takes the cake because not only does it have that kind of character as its villain, they try to throw another twist your way to kind of turn the story on its head. And that twist was just unnecessary. It just really took me out of the movie. And it's like, I think if you took out that twist, and the movie, the plot going wouldn't have changed so much. I understand what they were trying to do because this twist had something else to do with an identity being stolen, but I felt like for the purpose of the story flowing as well as it should, this plot twist was not necessary at all. And the main reason behind that is because it took this long-winded explanation that was all flashback. It was like a good 20 minutes long. Right at the climax, it's like, imagine it's the final confrontation, it's the climax, and suddenly it's flashback. And it's like, okay, you just totally lost me. That's what happens in this movie. And after all that's said and done, the payoff, the ending it just falls flat. So overall, what did I think of Stolen Identity? Well, as I've mentioned before, I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. It was a disappointment that I knew I was going to experience, but I still had some hope because the trailers looked kind of interesting. But in the end, yeah, it was like, this wasn't Nakata's return to form at all. It was, I don't even think it was so bad that it's kind of good status. It was just boring. It tries to overcomplicate itself with all these twists and turns towards the end, and you just don't really care for it at that point. Do I recommend this movie? Nah, give it a pass. Unless you just want your filmography of Nakata Hideo to be complete, then by all means, please check it out. But for me, nah, I think it's safe to say give it a pass. But yes, those are my thoughts on Soul and Identity. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. And if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. And if you really dig my content, please know you can always support Asian Films via Patreon for as little as $1. And yeah, that's about it for me, guys. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and hope to see you all again in the next video. Take it easy.